Looks like we've got a part 2 here, bruv. Still, where are we? I'll just read this whole thing over again. They went out together because it suited them. They had been going out that afternoon because it suited them. And now they were dead and sitting in the park because it had suited someone or something else. Someone who had let a weakness into the plane or had not been able to manage the plane. Or perhaps the city of facades, which in a mere magnetic emptiness had drawn them to be there, just there. Still motionlessly gazing across the darkening park, Lester thought again of Richard. If Richard had been in distress by her side, not of course crying and chattering, more likely dumb and rigid, would she have done anything? She thought probably not. But she certainly might, have cried to him. She would have expected him to help her, but she could not think of it. The pang took her quickly. He was not there and could not be. Well, the pain continued, but she was growing used to it. She knew she would have to get used to it. The voice of her side spoke again. It said through its sobs, the sobs catching and interrupting it, Lester, Lester, I'm so frightened. And then again, Lester, why won't you let me talk? Lester began, why? And had to pause, for in the shadow her voice was dreadful to her. It did not sound like a voice, only like an echo. In the apparent daylight it had not been so bad, but in this twilight it seemed only like something that, if it was happening at all, was happening elsewhere. It could not hold any meaning, for all meaning had been left behind. In her flat, perhaps, which she would never occupy again, or perhaps with the other dead, in the tunnels of the tube, or perhaps farther away yet, with whatever it was that had drawn them there and would draw them farther. This was only a little way. Oh, what she remained to know. She paused, but she would not be defeated. She forced herself to speak. She could and would dare that at least, she said. Why? Why do you want to talk now? The other voice said, I can't help it. It's getting so dark. Let's go on talking. We can't do anything else. She's got a point, baby girl. Lester felt again the small, weak hand on her arm, and now she had time to feel it. Nothing else intervened. She hated the contact. Evelyn's hand might have been the hand of some pleading lover whose touch made her flesh creep. She had once or twice in her proud life been caught like that, once in a taxi. The present touch brought sharply back that other clasp in this very park on a summer evening. She had only just not snapped into irritation and resentment then, but in some ways she had liked the unfortunate man and they had been dining pleasantly enough. She had remained kind, she had endured the fingers feeling up her wrist, her whole body loathing them, until she could, with sufficient decency, disengage herself. It was her first conscious recollection of an incident in her past, that act of pure courtesy, though she did not then recognize it either as recollection or as a courtesy. Only for a moment she thought she saw a taxi race through the park away before her, and she thought it could not be and was not. But she stiffened herself now against her instinctive shrinking and let her arm lie still, while the feeble hand clutched and pawed at her. Her apprehension quickened as she did so. To be what she was, to be in this state of death, was bad enough. But at the same time, to feel the dead, to endure the clinging of the dead, being dead, to know the dead, the live man in the taxi was far better than this. This that was Evelyn, the gabbing voice, the chattering teeth, the helpless sobs, the crawling fingers. But she had gone out with Evelyn much more than with the man in the taxi. Her heart acknowledged the debt. She continued to sit still. She said in a voice touched by pity, if not compassion, It's no good talking, especially like that. Don't you understand? Evelyn answered, resentfully choking, but still holding on. I was only telling you about Betty, and it's all quite true, and no one can hear me except you, so it doesn't matter. No one could hear. It was true enough, unless indeed the city heard, unless the distant facades and the nearer facade of trees and grass were listening, unless they had in them just that reality, at least, the capacity to overhear and oversee. The thin nothingness could perhaps hear and know. Lester felt all about her a strange attention, and Evelyn herself, as if frightened by her own words, gave a hasty look around and then burst again into a hysterical monologue. Isn't it funny? We're again into a hysterical monologue. No. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. I'm trying to read around the phone. I guess I don't have to talk in the English accent when I'm making comments. We never thought we'd be. Isn't it funny? We're all alone. We never thought we'd be alone like this, did we? But I only said what was quite true, even if I do hate Betty. I hate everyone except you. Of course I don't hate you. I'm very fond of you. You won't go away, will you? It's nearly dark again, and I hate it when it's dark. You don't know what the dark was like before you came. Why are we here like this? I haven't done anything. I haven't. I tell you, I haven't. I haven't done anything. The last word rose like a wail in the night, almost as in the cold, old tales, as if a protesting ghost was loosed and fled, in a cry as thin as its own tenuous wisp of existence, through the irresponsive air of a dark world, where its own justification was its only and worst accusation. So high and shrill was the wail that Lester felt as though Evelyn herself must have been torn away and have vanished. But it was not so. The fingers still clutched her wrist, and Evelyn still sat there, crying and ejaculating without strength and to cry louder. I haven't done anything. I haven't done anything at all. And what then could be done now, if neither Evelyn nor she herself had ever of old done anything? What could or should they do now, with nothing and no one about them, with only the shell of a city and then themselves, but shell, and perhaps not even true shell, only a faint memory and a pang worse than memory? It was too much to bear. As if provoked by an ancient impetuous impetuosity of rage, Lester sprang to her feet. Shelled her body, she sprang up, and the motion tore her from the hand that held her. She took a step away. Better go along than sit so, companion. And then, as her foot moved to the second step, she paused. Evelyn had failed again. Oh, don't go, don't go. Lester felt herself again thrusting Richard away, and she paused. She looked back over her shoulder, half in anger and half in pity and fear and scorn and tenderness. She looked back. She saw Evelyn instead of Richard. She stared down at the other girl, and she exclaimed out aloud, "Oh, my God!" It was the kind of casual exclamation she and Richard had been in the habit of throwing about all over the place. It meant nothing. When they were seriously aggressive or aggrieved, they used language borrowed from bestiality or hell. She had never thought it meant anything, but in this air, every word meant something. Meant itself, and this curious new exactitude of speech hung there like a strange language, if she had sworn in Spanish or Pushtu, and the oath had echoed into an invocation. Nothing now happened. No one came. Not a quiver disturbed the night. But for a moment she felt as if someone might come. Or perhaps not even that, no more than a sudden sense that she was listening, as if to hear if it was raining. She was becoming strange to herself. Her words, even her intonations, were foreign. In a foreign land she was speaking a foreign tongue. She spoke and did not know what she said. Her mouth was uttering its own habits, but the meaning of those habits was not her own. She did not recognize what she used. I haven't done anything. Oh my God. This was how they talked, and it was a great, precise, prehistoric language forming itself out of the noises their mouths made. She articulated the speech of Adam or Seth or Noah, and only dimly recognized the intelligibility of it. She exclaimed again despairingly, "Wretched!" And that word she did know. It was the only word common to her and the city in which she stood. It was the only word common to her and the city in which she stood. As she spoke, she almost saw his face, himself saying something, and she thought she would have understood that meaning, for his face was part of the meaning, as it always had been, and she had lived with that meaning, loved, desired, denounced it. Something intelligible and great loomed and was gone. She was silent. She turned. She said more gently than she had spoken before, "Evelyn, let's do something now." "But I haven't done anything," Evelyn sobbed. Again, the precise words sounded round. them, and Lester answering their meaning. "No," she said, "I know, nor have I much." She had for 6 months kept house for Richard herself and meant it. She had meant it. Quarrels and bickerings could not alter that. Even the throwing it away could not alter it. She lifted her head. It was as certain as any of the stars now above her in the sky. For the second time she fell apart. She felt apart from Evelyn, her past present with her. The first had been in the sense of the shadowy taxi racing through the park. But this was stronger and more fixed. She lived more easily for that moment. She said again, "Not very much. Let's go." "But where can we go?" Evelyn cried. "Where are we? It's so horrible." Lester looked round. She saw the stars. She saw the lights. She saw dim shapes of houses and trees and a landscape, which was less familiar through being so familiar. She could not even yet manage to enunciate to her companion the word death. The landscape of death lay round them. The future of death awaited them. Let them go to it. Let them do something. She thought of her own flat and of Richard. No, she did not wish to take this other Evelyn there. Besides, she herself would be, if anything at all, only a dim shadow to Richard, a hallucination or a troubling apparition. She could not bear that. If it could be avoided, she could not bear to be only a terrifying dream. No, they must go elsewhere. She wondered if Evelyn felt in the same way about her own home. She knew that Evelyn had continuously snubbed and suppressed her mother, with whom she lived. Once or twice she had herself meant to say something, if only out of a indifferent superiority, but the indifference had beaten the superiority. It was now for Evelyn to choose. She said, "Shall we go to your place?" Evelyn said shrilly, "No, no, I won't see Mother. I hate Mother." Lester shrugged. One way and another, they did seem to be rather vagrants, unfortunate and helpless creatures with no purpose and no use. She said, "Well, let's go." Evelyn looked up at her. Lester, with an effort at companionship, tried to smile at her. She did not very well succeed. But at least Evelyn slowly and reluctantly got to her feet. The lights in the houses had gone out, but a faint clarity was in the air, perhaps, though it had come quickly, the first suggestion of her day. Lester knew exactly what she had better do, and with an effort she did it. She took Evelyn's arm. The two dead girls went together slowly out of the park. Well, that is quite odd, bruv. Very odd. Shall we continue? Shall we?